So it's exciting and a great relief as well to have reached the final stage of our current development project. And that is finishing the work here in the east end of the cathedral, putting in new heating and lighting and sound, as well as some new lavatories and a changing places facility. This project is all about making the place more user-friendly for our visitors, for our worshippers, for all our users. And this part of the project is making a big impact on that. It's also teaching us quite a lot about the history of the building. And I know John, our archaeologist, will tell you a bit more about that in a few moments. We are really grateful to those who have helped fund this project, in particular the National Lottery Heritage Fund and the Benefact Trust, without whose support it would not be possible to keep this cathedral in good order for the next century or two.
I'm John Allen. I'm the cathedral's archaeologist. Let me first try and show you where we are, because we're within a bubble designed to keep dust down with air handling in our background, and it won't be immediately obvious where we are. We're actually standing in the north choir aisle, and behind me on our right are the choir stalls and the choir proper beyond them. So if we could see past this plastic, you'd be able to see the great arches at the back of the choir stalls. And if we turn around and look on my left, we'd be looking at the outside of the building with the aisle windows and with the rows of monuments along the side of the aisle. We're carrying out an excavation here because the cathedral is improving its heating system, and to do this nowadays in the least obtrusive manner possible, it's placing its heating below the floor. And the floor has not been lifted for more than 200 years, and below the floor we know there are many burials. So our intention is to empty the top fills of the burials without disturbing the human remains below them. So we're going down about that much, about 600 mil, and in the process we're not only finding a large number of graves, but very exciting from our point of view, new evidence about the structural history of the cathedral, and in particular in this area where we're standing we're finding the footings of the Norman cathedral, which was enormously enlarged in the 14th century. And just down to my right here, we're looking at great blocks of masonry, about 300 down, about a foot down if you like, below the floor. And you'll see that the bottom two courses here are quite different from the upper courses. And the upper courses belong with the Gothic church of the early 14th century, and they sit on top of this older masonry, which takes us back to the early days of the Norman cathedral from 1114 or so. Now, we got a good idea that these were going to be present, but we haven't seen them previously, and in fact no one has recorded these footings in the past, and they tell us about the plan of the Norman church. The Norman church, we've known, was shorter at this end. It had a short choir, and the choir proper extended down into the crossing of the cathedral. Now those nice dressed courses of early masonry carry along up to this point where they stop, and instead from this point onwards we're looking at the core of the old Norman church wall, and this is a vital point to us because we're actually at the point where there would be a curving end to the Norman cathedral, an apse, which would probably be squared off on its outside face. Now, we rather thought this was what we might find, but of course it's quite a different matter actually finding some evidence rather than relying on guesswork. So here then the 12th century cathedral, the Norman cathedral, and excitingly we have this new piece of key evidence about what the East End looked like. Now, in addition, of course, there are lots and lots of burials, and the very earliest of these belong in the Middle Ages, but most of them, in fact, are of Georgian and Victorian date. And we are simply taking out the fills. I mentioned that we aren't reaching the burials themselves, and you'll see that the graves are lined with mortar, a white mortar, and on these, of course, there would have been ledger stones, the stones which record who was who, and a massive component of the present exercise has been lifting these huge stones, which you see stacked behind me here. Ellis and Co have been working to lift them up, place them to one side, carry out the construction work, and then put them all back. And so our archaeologists are working with builders skilled in conservation work, and with the architect to come up with a scheme which will greatly improve the heating in the cathedral.